This is Rod Martin coming to you live from Grace Hall in beautiful Destin, Florida. This week witnessed two extraordinary and extraordinarily different rocket launches. One by Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin, the other by Elon Musk's SpaceX. They represent radically different approaches to development, to innovation, and frankly, to the future. We're going to look at that briefly today. First, kudos to Jeff Bezos for his successful launch of New Glenn. New Glenn made it to orbit on the first try. You gotta hand it to the guy. That's a big achievement. Also, New Glenn is far and away a superior rocket to anything currently flown by any of Boeing or Lockheed or the Europeans' Arianespace or Japan or India or China or Russia. It's a technical marvel in isolation. It's also years late, and Elon's Falcon 9, with which it's competitive, has been the workhorse of the entire space industry now for nearly a decade. The Falcon 9 in the last 3 years launched 85% of everything that went into space for the entire planet. That's an extraordinary record and an extraordinary record of reusability. These rockets fly again and again. You don't throw them away every trip like NASA has always done, or any of those other players I just described. The Falcon 9 is partially reusable, as the Blue Origin rocket is. They both dispose of their upper stage, which doesn't come back to Earth. But in the process of doing what I just described, Elon Musk reduced the price of a comparable rocket launch from $150 million before he started to just $62 million. That's a shocking savings in taxpayer money, and it's also an opportunity for lots of companies and research institutions to be involved in space in a way they never could afford to be before. Now, of course, Elon's cost is much lower than his price, and same presumably for Jeff Bezos. But that's not the story. The story is that the Blue Origin rocket, years behind, competes with the current state of the art. And the state of the art is changing before our eyes. That's the second rocket launch. Elon's Starship, launching from Starbase, Texas, the former town of Boca Chica. Starship nailed the landing. The super heavy booster once again landed back at the pad, caught in midair by the chopsticks on the tower. It's an extraordinary video. The upper stage didn't have as much luck. The upper stage, which is the actual Starship, actually blew up in midair. The light show was fantastic. It is super entertaining. And that's not really what you want out of your rocket program, except, wait, for Elon, unlike Bezos, unlike Boeing, unlike Lockheed, unlike NASA, it actually is. And here's why. Innovation is all about failing fast. You want to work through all of the possibilities that could trip you up so that you can nail a product that works right every time. That's what Elon did with the Falcon 9. That's why it's the workhorse of the world. That's what's happening with Starship. Within an hour of the explosion, Elon announced that he already had a new iteration designed that'll be ready to fly within a month. They won't blow up the next one, but if they do, they'll learn from that explosion too. This is the difference between SpaceX and everybody else. Fail fast. It's an inherently Silicon Valley way of looking at the world, and the entire aerospace industry does it completely differently. You remember the movie Apollo 13, failure is not an option. Well, in that context, that made sense because the failure you're talking about is 3 astronauts dying alone in space. NASA needed to get them home. I'm all for that. But failure is not an option doesn't work in entrepreneurship. It doesn't work in business. It doesn't work in technology. Failure has to be an option because without failure, you can't ever get to success. We're breaking new ground here. We're doing things that have never been done. In the process, you're going to get some things wrong. And what's really, really strikingly different about Elon compared to all of his competition is that he's not afraid to do it. He's not afraid to be humiliated in public by a failure. He just picks himself up and immediately dusts himself off and is back in the air and back in space with the next better rocket. This is like nothing we've ever seen in modern times. You'd have to go back to the World War II era to see the aerospace industry act so brazenly and bravely. And Elon's brought that back, and that's why we're actually going to colonize Mars. We're actually going to build bases on the moon, and we're actually going to have 1 million people living and working in space by late mid-century. These rockets were both successful in different ways. But the bigger success went to the one that the uninitiated might think failed. Starship is a completely new generation of technology. It's a fully reusable, not partially reusable rocket, and it will ultimately be able to do things that are straight out of science fiction, including, and I must point this out, change the balance of power on Earth. Because aside from the fact that it will take us to Mars, aside from the fact that it will enable lunar mining and asteroid mining and space station construction and 1,000 other things, all those things are true. A fleet of 500 or 1,000 of these will allow the U.S. military to put an entire armored division anywhere on Earth in under an hour. That's a game changer. That completely changes the logistical picture. Likewise, these rockets will be able to carry 200 passengers from New York to London in 23 to 26 minutes. That changes the world. That shrinks the world in a powerful, powerful way. And that's what Elon's playing for here. So kudos to Jeff Bezos, did a great job, but Elon is still the future.